Action Research Presentation by Daniela Badali. Statement of Core Values. My core values as an educator are embedded in my strong belief of creating a positive and safe learning environment for all my students. I will strive to create a classroom where all students feel welcomed, included, and accepted. I believe that this inclusive model will result in all students achieving their own personal academic success. This sense of accomplishment will motivate students to move forward in their learning and continue to strive for goals that they otherwise wouldn't feel they could achieve. From this personal ideology, I have formed 3 core values as an educator. Firstly, a classroom should focus on creating an inclusive environment for all students by enhancing all learning styles. Secondly, I believe that a classroom teacher should implement differentiated instruction to cater to all diverse learners. Lastly, a classroom teacher should engage students by creating interactive lessons. In order to put these values into practice, a teacher must be aware of the diverse learners present in the classroom and how to support their individual learning needs. Looking at my beliefs through a social constructivist worldview, my values focus on observing students' interactions with one another in relation to their setting. During my last placement, I struggled with strategies to engage the students who were often defiant towards education and who were unmotivated to participate. These students often struggled with attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Working with these students can be frustrating because their ability to succeed is evident, but they just can't seem to focus on the learning material. Due to their inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, their behaviors can often disrupt the class. In reference to my placement, these students were either integrated half-day or full-day and were allowed to seek help from this resource room whenever they felt it was appropriate. As a result of this challenge, it has become important to me to develop my teaching skills further and acquire a deeper understanding of how to target instruction for these unmotivated students. Consequently, my research question is, what are some strategies that can be implemented in the classroom that will help build an inclusive environment for students with ADHD? Some terms that are important to understand for my research are the following: attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or short formed for ADHD. Being that these are the target students in my research, it is important to know how to identify them. These students are given this diagnosis when they experience consistent and serious patterns of inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and/or impulsivity in different settings. They are believed to benefit from differentiated instruction, or short formed for DI, as their ability to learn depends on their learning needs. Nevertheless, students with ADHD deserve an equal opportunity to learn in the classroom. A preliminary literature review. During the preliminary literature review, my articles focused on providing strategies to include students with ADHD in the class throughout the academic day. Resource 1: Practical Strategies for Teaching Students with Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder in General Physical Education Classrooms. My first resource allowed me to understand the benefits that physical education has towards students who have been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Engaging students in physical activity requires them to concentrate on their bodily movements. By providing physical activity throughout the day, students maintain this concentration, which helps them to stay on task for longer periods of time. Resource 2: Reading Strategies for Students with ADD and ADHD in the Inclusive Classroom. My second resource allowed me to understand multiple reading strategies that can be implemented in an inclusive classroom to help students with ADHD obtain an understanding of what they just read. Implementing pre- and post-reading strategies will help all students, with or without ADHD, to further enhance their comprehension level. These strategies must be interesting, relevant, motivating, and multisensory in nature. Resource 3: Behavioral Interventions for the Classroom. Implications for students with ADHD. My third resource allowed me to understand possible educational management strategies for the inclusion of students with ADHD in the regular classroom. These strategies focus on the modifications that can be done to the task at hand and to the physical environment of the classroom. These strategies help these students remain integrated in the classroom throughout the day. Resource 4, Students with ADHD in the Classroom. My last resource allowed me to understand that the combination of behavioral modification strategies and medication will help monitor ADHD behaviors. This resource also introduced me to 3 different types of structured approaches of inclusion for students with ADHD in the classroom. These intervention strategies move from an unstructured approach to a more structured approach. The unstructured intervention strategy facilitates the inclusion of all students in the classroom. The moderately structured intervention strategy requires the teacher to monitor the effects of the medication and the student's behavior. Many students with ADHD require this intervention level to be successful in the inclusive classroom. Finally, the structured intervention strategy is a more controlled strategy and involves the dedication of more than one professional in the classroom. The decision to implement one of these 3 intervention strategies highly depends on the student's characteristics and their individual needs for structure. My research plan, data resources. The data resources I chose to use include anecdotal notes, interviews, and student journals. I chose to use these resources because they focus on obtaining qualitative data. Although it is hard and time-consuming to analyze qualitative data, I chose these resources of data because they focus on observing and reflections of students' words and actions. By using anecdotal notes, I hope to learn which strategies of inclusion work best with the students, or which strategies didn't work and why. I hope to gain insight regarding their individual character and what engages them. By interviewing all students, I hope to gain more knowledge about the students individually. Knowing the students better would help me understand which strategies to implement in the class based on their interests. It would also help me to understand why a strategy did or did not work. Interviews with past teachers and support staff would also aid towards my knowledge of the students and what strategies worked in the past. Lastly, through personal journal entries, I hope to gain an understanding of how my students are feeling throughout this process. I'm hoping to understand the change in students' engagement as strategies change. These written reflections will also help me to become aware of which strategies the students liked. These journal entries will also act as a way for students to remember their thoughts and feelings in between interviews, to ensure all data is shared during verbal discussion. In order to choose the best source of data, I had to consider who my participants are and how the data will be collected. I wanted my data collection to be effective and non-disruptive during a lesson. The methods I have chosen are commonly practiced in the classroom and effectively support my research. To ensure the validity and reliability of data, I chose multiple forms of data collection, such as interviews with students and staff members, personal journals with students, and anecdotal notes taken by the teacher. Each source of data allows my students to express their thoughts and feelings in a variety of form. Interviews will be unstructured. Open-ended questions will be posed, allowing for detailed conversation to form. Questions discussed will be posed and developed by the teacher and will be based on common themes found in both anecdotal notes and personal journals. Interviews will be recorded and notes will be taken to ensure no key information is missed. Anecdotal notes will include different engagement levels demonstrated by students, especially those with ADHD. Data collected and recorded will also be based on behavior, actions, and conversations demonstrated by the students. These notes will be analyzed at the end of the day, after students have gone home. Common themes will help form interview questions. Student journals. Students will keep personal journals as a way to document their reflections, detailing their feelings towards current strategies. They have the freedom to document as frequently as they want, but a minimum number of entries must be included per strategy. Journals will be collected on a weekly basis to be observed and reviewed for common themes that align with the interview topics and anecdotal notes. Participants and setting. I, the teacher, will be responsible for collecting and recording the data, but the students will be responsible for providing the data. For example, they are the ones providing journal entries. Their statements will be recorded during the interview process, and my anecdotal notes will be based on their behavior. Data collection will occur at school, during school hours, and will be based on the strategies implemented in the classroom. My research plan, data collection procedures. This study will take place over the course of 5 months beginning in September and ending in January. I have included the month of January as a way to reinforce desired strategies as students return from their winter break. However, depending on students' reaction to certain strategies, the proposal is flexible and could last longer if needed. The first interviews of this research will be with past teachers and support staff to form an understanding of what has worked in the past for the students. This meeting will act as a starting point for this research process. Interviews will then be held monthly with students. Anecdotal notes will be noted daily, especially when a student demonstrates desired or undesired behavior in relation to an implemented strategy. Lastly, student journals will be collected and reviewed weekly, especially after a strategy has been implemented in the classroom. Ethical considerations. First and foremost, permission from the principal and parents is needed before beginning. A letter will be sent home to parents outlining the details of the research. To maintain students' privacy throughout the process, student journals and anecdotal notes will be kept with the teacher in a locked drawer to ensure no one else reads them. Students are allowed to complete their journal entries at home to ensure peers do not see what is written in them. Both one-on-one and group interviews will be held throughout this process. The content discussed in these interviews will remain between the interviewer and the interviewees. Students will not remain anonymous to the teacher, as it is important for the teacher to know how each student is feeling throughout the process. It is important to remember that this study is about the effective inclusion of students with ADHD. There is no need or desire to single these students out. Therefore, all students will participate in the interview process and the journaling process. It is the teacher who is aware of which students to pay close attention to throughout the process and throughout the research. As a new teacher, this research study will help me to understand the effect certain strategies have in the class. It will also help me to design and implement strategies to include students with ADHD in the classroom. Overall, I hope to understand how these strategies are effective for students with ADHD, which will ideally help to engage all students in the classroom. Thank you for watching.